So Games Workshop's just announced their next preview reveal show. There's some really specific hints as to what's going to be coming, and in particular it looks like there's going to be a new Deathwatch kill team between their fancy hat and the current models just going off sale. Loads of other possibilities though, and some strong hints as to what's coming, so let's talk about what we've got. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I thought we'd talk over Games Workshop's next announced reveal show, and all the hints they've dropped towards it, some of them a little bit more obvious than others. It seemed likely that the next sneak peek reveal show that they had will be going live at the Tacoma Open. They usually tend to tie them in with their big flagship events that tend to feature competitive games, narrative games and a bunch of other stuff going on. And the next one of those is around about the 18th of July. They often tend to do them on the Thursday nights, though it looks like it's a Friday night preview for this one. Though given they didn't actually mention the Tacoma Open as part of the hype for that, maybe they're still working out details and whether or not they're showcasing it there or not. In any case, for the vast majority of the world that won't be attending that event, their online preview will go live at 7 PM in the UK and between 11 or 2 PM in the USA, the other times here at the bottom right of the screen. And they'll be streaming those previews live both on YouTube and Twitch and following it up with videos. For the occasion around this one, it's tied in with 10 years of Age of Sigmar. And they mentioned there's going to be a brand new faction reveal for the Mortal Realms, which we basically already know what it is. And then they said there's plenty for the Grimdark settings. On their actual teaser preview, they didn't actually say exactly which systems will get reveals, but then they've sent out an email that's confirmed it. And the ones listed are Warhammer 40K, the Horus Heresy, the Old World, Legions Imperialis, Warhammer Underworlds, and Kill Team. So they are covering all the Grimdark settings there, plus of course Age of Sigmar, where they're getting the new army as they'd confirmed. As mentioned, one of the most exciting and specific things looks like they're getting a new Deathwatch kill team. They've given us a bunch of teasers with a fun variety of silly hats as we'll get onto, and due to their previous teasers, leaks and rumours, we have a fair idea as to what's coming next for 40k in general. First up, the strongly suspected new faction to be coming out for Age of Sigmar is some sort of Chaos Dwarves. This will be their brand new army for the Mortal Realms, so I guess Age of Sigmar and not Old World, given that the whole teaser and the preview revolves around that. I can't say I've been following things too closely. I've certainly seen that going around the internet rumour mill a bunch already. And then as per the teasers for this one, basically confirming that there will be a new army and then deciding to tease other armies with big hats, all but confirms that that is going to be right. As you can see, the Chaos Dwarves seem to get on pretty well with their big fancy hats here. I believe some of their more recent models that weren't from really classic a long time ago was this Blood Bowl team. There's no particular guarantee that they're going to stick enormously closely to this, though they certainly might. Age of Sigmar certainly reinterpreted most of the Warhammer Fantasy factions in one way or another, so it's possible they could redesign the faction with different archetypes. That certainly sounds like they're keeping fancy hats, judging by the teasers. Talking of that, basically in the announcement and hype trailer for this, they did it as a video call between the presenters, and basically said they'd leave some very subtle clues in the video, and then proceeded to wear a whole variety of funny hats. Some of which feel like they could be really quite non-specific or just stuff that we haven't really seen yet, but a whole bunch of them are really obvious as to what they could be talking about. In particular, the one that's maybe the single most obvious is the Deathwatch one, just literally a merch cap with the Deathwatch symbol on the front of it. I think it is the one specific for them as opposed to a more general Inquisition symbol. I guess technically there's other options they could go for Deathwatch releases, but given this teaser seems to have paired with the removal of one of their kits from sale, it's probably a Deathwatch kill team. I guess could also be tied in with Astartes 2 for all we know. I'll cycle back to them in a second though. Then beyond that we had a Jester's hat, which is hard to think of anything else besides Harlequins unless they're doing some sort of weird circus thing for fantasy in some way or another. Again, they could work really well as a kill team, and they could be a pretty good versus box for each other I guess. Then we've got a pirate hat, which could maybe be a few more things. It could be Eldari Corsairs, it could just be Drukhari in general as sort of pirates and raiders, or maybe a little bit less likely could be Orc Flashkits or Freebooters or Captain Badrock. Quite a bit less specific there. I guess Drukhari are the ones that haven't had their codex yet, but also maybe don't tend to lead into actual pirate hats quite so much. And that one's not necessarily definitely 40k, it definitely could be a fantasy setting. Then we've got a Pharaoh or Egyptian headdress. Seems probably most likely to be something Tomb Kings, perhaps an Old World or even Underworld style reveal, though it could be either Thousand Sons or Necrons for 40k. Both of those have the sort of Egyptians in space style vibe. Necrons could be a fairly fitting antagonist for the Deathwatch and a kill team box as well. And then for the others beyond that, as maybe a little bit less sure, maybe some sort of winter hat of some sort. Maybe it could be something like Vostrians or Space Wolves, though I feel like they're probably unlikely. Feels like if it's Space Wolf Wolf Scouts, as have been rumoured, a Viking hat might be a bit more appropriate for them. There's a cowboy hat of some sort, maybe something skirmish game related or a gunslinger or something. A wizard hat, which could be something fantasy setting. And then a regular top hat and a bigger top hat, not too sure on that one. Talking through the teasers though, and the other things that we know are possibilities for Warhammer 40k, the prospect of new Deathwatch models is pretty exciting. So far, out of the Divergent Space Marine chapters, they've been the ones that have been most hung out to dry recently. Games Workshop not even giving them a single Primaris release in the new modern era of 40k. And then in 10th edition, deciding that they weren't really worth making a codex for and just giving them a digital index instead. Nice that they pedalled back on basically folding them into Imperial Agents though, where they weren't really treated very well at all. And I do wonder if this could have some sort of tie-in with Astartes 2, which is supposed to be Deathwatch themed. Given that with these previews they tend to focus on miniatures though, miniatures seem most likely, and just in case we needed another hint, it looks like the Deathwatch Veterans kit has just been taken off sale. As best I know, that's happened recently, maybe even today. Certainly last time I looked at it, it was on sale. It said it's sold out online in the UK, so that's usually the code that they give it when it's not coming back. Seems just to be absent entirely from the North America web store. They're still up at least for now in Australia. It looks like the Watchmaster, Artemis and Corvus Blackstar are still on full sale, so I guess they'll be sticking around, and that could give us yet more information that it's probably a Kill Team release, which maybe seemed likely anyway. It does feel like it's a pretty obvious potential move for them, given that they have a whole game mode called Kill Team, Deathwatch fights in Kill Teams, not really too hard to put 2 and 2 together really. And if that does wind up being the case, then it's likely a 10 model box set of this kit on the right. I'd guess just upgraded to Tacticus armour, and then still having their fun array of fancy wargear. Though I guess it could also be something a bit more wild and wonderful. Potential for kill teams with different marks of armour. They could even mix in some Gravis or Phobos operatives into the same squad to make something new. Though I guess that's probably less likely compared with just keeping it Tacticus. It'll likely have some rules implications for Deathwatch and Imperial Agents if so, as a new kit would no doubt have slightly different war gear and maybe more restrictive ones and new rules. Next up, for the Jester's hat. It just doesn't really feel like anything fits that quite as well as Harlequins. They'd also be a pretty great target for a Kill Team update as well. If they decided to redo them at the same time, it could be basically a refight of the Deathmask box set that they had before, the one where they had that story with trying to thwart the plans of Eldrad Ulthran. I guess the Harlequins models are maybe a touch on the simplistic side. I'd certainly be intrigued to see a Kill Team version of them, and it could be a relevant kit to both Eldari and Drukhari if they wind up doing that. Otherwise, beyond that for Warhammer 40k, we already have some big clues from Games Workshop from their roadmap. Given that we've now had reveals going up to all the nightly ones, including the Black Templars, the next ones on the list are the Space Marines and the Leagues of Votann. And given that they've confirmed Warhammer 40k reveals here, it'd maybe be kind of surprising if they didn't showcase the things that are for the next codexes in the line. They did say in the preview that specifically power armoured guys with bolters would get some attention in this, though I guess that could apply to either Deathwatch or Heresy. But given that the next teasers were for chapter-specific Space Marines, I guess they're referring to mainline Codex Astartes. I talked through the teasers in a recent video, but basically they gave us a whole bunch of things referencing individual Codex chapters, so Imperial Fist, Salamanders and Raven Guard, and likely equal attention for the rest. If they are doing some sort of major release for those, then it likely means new rules for those specific armies. I don't know if they might expand them to multiple detachments or give them some sort of chapter tactics or something. And then the rumoured model releases, which I've heard some independent rumours for, are that they are going to be getting a bunch of characters. Lysander and Vulcan Hestan apparently are amongst them. And again, it's notable that Vulcan Hestan has recently had his model taken down from the Warhammer web store. They've had his current Finecast kit on sale for quite some time. On top of that, it's supposed to be some new combat patrols. I've heard about a Raven Guard one with a Jump Captain and Invictor, and an Imperial Fist one with some company heroes. And then presumably on top of that, different ones for the different chapters. Generic releases could definitely be a possibility at some point in 10th as well. We had the Strikeforce Agastus box in 9th and Shadowspear in 8th. I'd be incredibly surprised if they didn't do similar for 10th. It could be entirely new Primaris units they dream up with some sort of fancy weapons of one sort or another. They haven't done a Graf Primaris unit for example yet, but sticking out as the most obvious things to update, Vanguard Veterans and Assault Terminators will certainly be getting a new model sculpt at some time sooner or later. It just depends on when. If they're doing a major Space Marine release this year, maybe we'll get it this year rather than next, but who knows. Otherwise, at this point in the release schedule, there's also the Leagues of Votann as well. If they're doing a big mix preview, I don't know whether we'd get 2 40k things checked off, particularly if they've got some fun stuff for Kill Team as well. But they'd be getting their new codex, a new combat patrol apparently led by an Einherjar champion, with some Thunderkin, Hearthkin and maybe some Einherjar Hearthguard in the box, and then a release wave for 10th edition. Again, from rumours I've heard things like a smaller follow-up release wave, including a few characters, but also some infantry and a vehicle of some sort. Not sure if they'll get a launch battle force alongside that. Most factions so far have had a launch box when they get a release wave, though not every single one of them. For example, the Eldari didn't. Then for the mainstream 40k codexes, besides any surprises, that just leaves us with Drukhari. So far they haven't been on the roadmap at all, so I guess that potentially means they're a bit behind the Leagues of Votann, otherwise they might have been revealed first, but who really knows with Games Workshop. The one thing that does seem highly likely with them is the Lady Malice model. Games Workshop accidentally posted out a sprue of that early, and she seemed possible to identify given her war gear, plus a bit of Cabal-specific iconography on her armour. Fingers crossed they'd actually have a proper release wave on the way though, as they desperately need it, perhaps more so than most of the other armies in 40k. Plenty of models just out of production. Grotesques, the Court of the Archon, the Beastmaster, and Urian Rikarth all need updates, and that'd just be to stop them losing kits. Obviously if they could stretch to Astrobel Vex, that would be cool as well. I'm wondering if they might get a release early in like January sort of in 2025. Maybe doing something like the Guard or World Eaters did towards the end of 9th edition perhaps. Yeah, perhaps some of the more obvious things for Warhammer 40k, but otherwise being confirmed for Heresy reveals might raise the possibility of plastic Custodes. This is one of the things that they most clearly have telegraphed are coming, and between the delayed Liber books and the confirmed plastic Guardian Spear, we know that they're going to be the next faction that's going to have a bunch of resin kits translate into plastic. It was always going to happen at some point, given that they've been doing the same for every other faction in the Horus Heresy. Custodes just seem to have been left till last. It'd obviously be really interesting for 40k players if we did wind up getting some stuff here. I'm sure loads of Custodes players would love the opportunity to buy Caladius Grav tanks or Venatari Custodes at cheaper than Forge World prices. It'd be really nice to have them as a more well-rounded army with plastic kits for everything. Though I'd really hope that if they do start to go for this in a major way, they might have a chance they could confirm that they're available for 40k into the far future. It'd just be very disappointing if they decided to do what they did with the Leviathan and Contemptor Dreadnoughts, which had a similar place in the Imperial Armour Index, and then Games Workshop released fancy plastic kits for them, loads of people bought them, and then they promptly sent them to Legends for 40k. I'd really hope that they continue to treat the Custodes differently, as they have with them and the Imperial Knights so far, but really isn't the sort of thing that I massively trust them to do until they've explicitly stated it. This one might not necessarily be the Custodes quite yet though. They had done some teasers for things like Jump Pack Assault Squads in Crusade armour, and a couple of other things in the mainline Heresy announcement, so it's pretty possible that we could get those first as opposed to later. Really interesting stuff though. Let me know your thoughts on the possibilities for the previews. What could those mysterious hats represent? I certainly look forward to hearing all your thoughts down in the comments below. What would be your hopes and fears for a Primaris Deathwatch kill team? And let me know what you'd like to see. In any case, I'll leave this one there though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you'd like to support the channel and help keep the videos coming, the channel's Patreon page is linked down in the video description. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.